And we're live on the Stables Network.
Welcome to ATL Prime Sports, brought to you by the Association of Professional Ball Players of America, coming to you live from the ATL. I'm Todd Corder, Hot Atlanta, whatever you want to call our city. I'm in for Stephanie Stallworth this evening. Dave Cohen will be joining us shortly, the voice of the Georgia State Panthers in football, basketball, baseball. I've got JJ with me in Atlanta. I have Breck out in San Francisco with the boards, and JJ is my big sidekick tonight. You can follow the show on Twitter at ATL Prime Sports, myself at Quarter Todd, JJ at JJ Get You One, Stephanie at ATL Traffic Lady, Mark at Mancini Sports.
Hello, this call is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please hang up now. The recording has stopped.
That is our phone number. We'll be glad to take your calls this evening. We'll be on until about 9:15. So once again, 678-280-7123. Please join us. It's kind of our NFL draft special. We can't wait. And JJ, how are you this evening?
Doing well. Looking forward to breaking down the draft with our listeners and Dave on. It's going to be a great draft. Lots of players, lots of talent from top to bottom. Quarterback, defensive tackle, defensive end, running back. They're all there. You can get your players whatever round. There's plenty of them.
It's definitely deep at the wide receiver position this year. That's for sure. Dave, how are you this evening? The voice of the Panthers. Dave in with us? Dave, can you hear me?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Dave, how are you? I'm glad for you to join us this evening. It's a little bit of different format for you, usually talking strictly Georgia State, but we will get to Georgia State here. We're going to talk a lot of NFL tonight, and we're looking forward to your expertise.
Well, on the eve of the draft in the National Football League, I would assume that we're talking the National Football League. Not much going on around Georgia State right now, and not sure that we had any players that are expected to go in the draft. Maybe a left tackle, Hunter Atkinson. I don't know. Hunter Atkinson, Devin Gentry, one or two others may get a look-see in a free agent kind of situation. But, I think it's a pretty strong draft, as it is almost every year. But, you break down some of those positions and you go over some of the draft analysis, which is all over the internet and all over talk radio and all over cable sports on TV. And a lot of talent coming out of the Southeastern Conference and the ACC, and obviously the Big Ten and Big 12, very heavy. Personally, I look at it and say, hey, who in the Sun Belt Conference has a pretty good shot this year? It's a handful of names, but again, very Power 5, as it should be and as it normally is, very Power 5 heavy when it comes to looking over the prospects for the various teams in this draft.
Well, I'll tell you what, Dave, speaking of college football, I don't know if this is related to college football or not, but I'll have you and JJ comment on this. With an NHL no longer considering neutral sites for a season restart, NHL is looking at regional NHL arenas such as Carolina in the Metropolitan Division, Edmonton in the Pacific, and Minnesota in the Central. Nobody from the Atlantic yet. The NHL plans on a summer comeback in July. They plan on finishing 189 games of regular season, then the playoffs, which stuns me. Does this make you think we will have college football this fall or NFL football this fall, Dave?
Well, there are a number of different scenarios. And again, all you have to do is jump into Twitter, Facebook, anywhere on the internet. I mean, anything from no games to games played with no fans in the stands, to I've even heard conferences, playing just the conference portion of the schedule, which would basically chop the first month of the season off the schedule. So, in Georgia State's case, we'd lose the four non-conference games, starting with Murray State and then the week 2 game at Alabama. So that's a possibility. Right now, I just don't know that anybody can can come out and make any definitive plans with regards to what kind of a schedule they could play. They can put scenarios out there, but I still think it's too early with regards to how this virus is going to continue to progress, or if it's going to, if it's going to calm down a little bit, that, it would allow people, back into public places on a larger scale. I just think it's too early to be able to say what exactly is going to be the situation with not just college football, but college basketball, the NFL. Does Major League Baseball come up and play some sort of an abbreviated season? I don't know. I just think it's too early to say with regards to how this virus progresses or slows down that any plans, concrete plans could be made at this time.
Yeah, my opinion on that, TC, is kind of what Dave's saying. Is kind of let the numbers play out. I'd love to see it, but I don't know if necessary college football will be played in the fall. But maybe push it back to the spring. I've heard a couple things on the four-letter network saying that. I don't know how feasible that is or how possible that is. But it sounds like the NCAA and conferences, and Dave, maybe you've heard more than I have. It sounds like some conferences are saying, hey, we're dead set on playing conference schedules. TC mentioned earlier before the show, UConn's talking about canceling all their sports. So it looks like it's a conference by conference basis. And you may see maybe the Power 5 play and other schools don't. I have no clue at this point. But right now, I think it's a matter of, will the season be played in the fall, or will it be pushed back to maybe early spring of the next year? Who knows? That's a feasible question to ask.
Yeah, I saw those comments from the athletic director at the University of Connecticut, and I think he's kind of backtracked a little bit. I didn't read the whole article, but I think that maybe what he said was taken a little bit out of context. And folks have to remember he's speaking really just on behalf of UConn, not of, well, they're still in, I guess, the American Athletic, but he's speaking basically on behalf of just the university, not the affiliated conference they're in, whether it's AAC or Big East, which I guess it would be Big East, going into next year.
That's correct, Dave. He is speaking in regards to UConn. And he's not really zeroing in on any one sport. He's saying that most sports could be canceled. Some could be canceled. He's thinking definitely some of the sports will be canceled. Others that can practice social distance better, those are the ones he thinks that the University of Connecticut will participate in. We shall see. I mean, it's wide open. At this point, I agree with each one of you. Taking it one day at a time is something we definitely all have to do here, whether we have sports or not. But let's move on. Let's stick with let's go to the NFL draft, and let's stick a little bit to local and a local college player, and that is Jake Fromm. JJ, what round do you think he'll get selected in? And guess, because it is a guess in your mind which team will take him.
Ooh, well, my estimation, I think you'll see Jake Fromm go in the third or fourth round, and you're going to see Jake Fromm go to a team with a fairly good situation. He may be the backup for a couple years, learning in a system, and there's a couple that come to my mind. You look at Aaron Rodgers up in Green Bay, little older. Maybe they're looking for a quarterback 3 or 4 years down the line, and Jake Fromm could be that guy. Or if you ask me, a situation that primes him best would be in the NFC South in the state of Louisiana with the New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees is on his way out. Many think this is the last year for him. Sean Payton, very good quarterback coach. He's gotten quite a bit out of Drew Brees in his career, arguably one of the best quarterbacks ever. Jake Fromm, similar tangibles, very pocket passer friendly, accurate in the pocket. Had a down year last year. A lot of people believe it was due to the lack of wide receiver play. I personally think Jake Fromm's a winner. I watched him play for 3 years at Georgia. Started almost every game he played in. Won quite a bit of them. So I think the best fit for Jake Fromm would be about the 4th round with the New Orleans Saints and Sean Payton.
Dave, how about you?
Well, I haven't identified a team in particular, but I'll agree with JJ. I thought maybe middle to late 3rd, early 4th. Teams that are going to need a quarterback, and that's going to be top heavy in the first part of the draft, the first round, and obviously Joe Burrow out of LSU, Justin Herbert, Oregon, Tua Tagovailoa from Alabama. Those are the 3 guys right now that are your 1, 2, 3 for teams that find themselves in need of a quarterback. Those are the names obviously at the top of the list. Those are the names that are kind of taking a lot of the headlines. You got Jake Fromm from Georgia, a guy that I like because, listen, at the end of the day, even though he might be one of those players that general managers and coaches don't see as a quarterback, they may see him at another position. I don't know. I've liked him since he was at Alabama, and that's Jalen Hurts, who finished up his career, as everyone knows, at Oklahoma. He was a winner everywhere he went, not just on the field, but off the field, was never a problem. Wasn't a problem when he lost the starting job. Wasn't a problem when he regained the starting job when Tua got hurt. So I don't know. I've always been high. I don't know the guy, never met him, never played against Georgia State. But Jalen Hurts, to me, now whether or not he can be an NFL quarterback, I'm not 100% sure. I would put him kind of, we don't know that Jake Fromm is going to be a top-line NFL quarterback. I mean, a lot of this, probably a good bit of it is, it's a gamble as to how these kids coming out of college can adjust to the National Football League level game where the players are now bigger, they're faster, they're stronger, and it becomes a business as opposed to waking up, going to class, going to practice, and playing on Saturdays. So it changes. Every college athlete that I've interviewed that's played at the next level, whether it's the NBA or Major League Baseball or college football or what have you, they talk about how the situation changes when it becomes your business and your life, the work that you do, it becomes a job as opposed to being, part of your college experience. And I'll throw out one other quarterback that has gotten a little bit of play. And the only reason I know anything about this kid is because a former Georgia State athletic department personnel is now the athletic director out at Utah State, and that's Justin Love out at Utah State, who I know has gotten a little bit of ink and a little bit of publicity as far as whether or not he could possibly play at the next level. But those are kind of six of the quarterbacks that, I see on the board. But circling back around, I think Jake Fromm's probably late 3rd, early 4th round, but I'm not sure to who.
Dave, you're going to like this because I'm this is just a guess. I'll go Jake Fromm, and I think he goes to the New England Patriots, and I think they pull the trigger in late 2nd or early 3rd. I think he's a fit in New England, especially if they can get some wide receivers. And I just think he'd be a great fit. Let's go on to our next question here. We're going to take our callers after this next topic. Hang on, we'll get to you. 678-280-7123. And we're starting out local. We will expand nationally, I promise you. Falcons GM Thomas D has been known to trade up. He's done it 5 times. Will he pull the trigger and make it number 6? And if so, who does he get, Dave?
Well, for the Falcons, I think they're going to look obviously defensively. Who's out there on the defensive side that you'd like to trade up and get? Obviously, they're not going to be in a position to get some of the top names like a Chase Young, so on and so forth. So, what position on the defensive side of the football are they going to look, what position is really most at need at this point? Is it in the secondary? Is it amongst their linebackers? Obviously some quality guys that are available, but do they feel like they need to trade to move up? And is it that urgent, I should say, that you're willing to make a trade to move up? And who are you going to get that's going to, make that trade worthwhile? I guess that's kind of the big question. I wouldn't be surprised if the Falcons move up and look to pick up somebody. It's just a question of who it is and what position is most in need right now.
JJ, did I lose you? Are you there? We might have lost JJ.
There it is.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. Go ahead.
Having a little mic issues there.
That's all right.
As I check in a little late here, I think the question is, when does Thomas Dimitroff make the trade? Because if you look at Thomas Dimitroff and his stat sheet as general manager of the Atlanta Falcons, he has in fact made a trade in each of the last 12 drafts. Pretty impressive. Now, it hasn't always been in the first round or trading up or trading down, but he will make a trade. He has done it in each and every one of the last 12 drafts, starting in last year. He moved up, got Caleb McGarity with the 31st pick. They traded with the Rams to get the 31st overall pick. They sent their 45th and their 79th pick to the Rams. They also received a sixth round pick number 203 from the Rams. The Falcons selected Marcus Green with that pick. And then they also, obviously, they picked up Caleb McGarity. That was in 2019. 2018, the Falcons traded with the Rams again to move up to get a sixth-round pick for Russell Gage, who is currently on this team and making a big impact. The year before, 2017, the Falcons traded up with Seattle to get the 26th overall pick and Takaris McKinley. Big-time factor. Hasn't been the biggest player yet, but we'll see if with the addition of Dante Fowler, does that move pay off? So it's a matter of when. Does he move up in the first round? Does he go back and trade back and get more picks? So the question is, where does he move? Let's answer it like this. If he moves up, TC, you would think it's Isaiah Simmons. We've had this talk off the record.
Yep, I do.
I personally think if the Falcons are moving up, they're going to move up and try and get under that number 3 spot and get the cornerback Okudah out of Ohio State, or move up just a couple of picks and get C.J. Henderson. I have a feeling in my neck that Thomas Dimitroff is going to pull a shocker like he did and get Julio Jones. He's going to move up and draft Okudah out of Ohio State. Don't ask me why. It's just an inkling feeling of I have. Thomas Dimitroff needs a quarterback.
So you think they're going to trade? They're going to trade with Detroit, and Detroit's going to drop down. But with doing that, the Falcons only have X amount of picks in this draft. They have 7. So, they're losing their depth of the draft by doing that. But I understand where you're going because they may draft a corner. I think if they trade up, they're going to go get Isaiah Simmons because he can play multiple positions, DN, hybrid, outside linebacker, inside linebacker, and some safety. They can line him up in that spot. But I don't know. This year it might be tougher for him to move up. It may be easier to move back because he doesn't have a lot of picks to begin with. And if he can get some quality along with quantity, he may do that. Let's go ahead and take our callers. We've got Terry in from Atlanta. Terry, how are you today? Terry, you're on ATL Prime Sports. Are you with us?
I am sitting right here, and I've listened. I just have a very brief question. Do the Falcons do anything different because what has happened at Tampa Bay?
It's a great question, Terry. I'll answer it. I think they're going to draft every player in this draft. I think they're going to have to draft 6 or 7 defensive players, and they're just going to have to load up on that side of the ball because if they don't, man, unless Tom Brady does a Peyton Manning and kind of drastically, he didn't fall off the cliff his final year to Peyton Manning, but you saw that he made the decision to retire at the right time. Does Tom Brady take a big drop? But if he doesn't, man, Tampa is going to be one handful.
And I also think too on the quarterback side, don't forget Jacob Eason. He's hanging out there too. He's going to go very high too. I think. I wouldn't say to who, but he's just excellent, and he's going to go somewhere.
You're right about it.
Yeah, go ahead, JJ. That. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. I agree with you, Double T. Jacob Eason's got a heck of a cannon. I always said when he left Georgia, Jake Fromm was the better college quarterback. That guy's the better pro. I saw it with my own eyes. The throw that really stood out to me for Jacob Eason, I didn't follow him too much very well in Washington as much as I should have. Against Tennessee his freshman year at UGA, Georgia's down 7 points. They throw a deep bomb. It's caught by Isaiah McKenzie, scores the touchdown. We all know the rest. The Hail Mary and Josh Dobbs came back and beat them. But that was one of the best throws I have ever seen in my life. 60 yards on a rope to McKenzie, wide open, in stride, and I go, that's an NFL throw. Jacob Eason is an NFL-style quarterback. I think he may be a second-round draft pick. You'll see Jacob Eason have a very good NFL career. Double T, great point on Jacob Eason.
Now, just to refresh, wasn't he replaced by Jacob Fromm when he was injured?
Correct. That's correct. And he never got his job back, and he transferred to Washington. That's correct.
Yeah. I was at that game when Eason was injured. And it happened right in front of me. It was early in the season, and then Jake Fromm comes in, and it was not against a real strong team they played, but how many times are you going to get to see two NFL quarterbacks in the same game, you know?
On the same team. That's pretty.
On the same team.
That's pretty. Yeah. It goes to show how well Kirby Smart and Mark Richt were recruiting at the end of Mark Richt's era, and then at the beginning of Kirby Smart as he brought in Jake Fromm.
That's an excellent point, Terry. Thanks so much for calling.
You're welcome.
This evening. Really appreciate it. You have yourself a great evening. We'll talk to you next week.
All righty.
Thank you.
Of course, you may be having that
Atlanta.
same discussion next year with Fields if he comes out of Ohio State.
Oh, that's right. Yes, that's correct. That's
with regards to seeing potential pro quarterbacks on the same roster at the same time.
Yeah,
that's right.
Technically, Jacob Eason, he was in the transfer portal. Jake Fromm and Justin Fields, technically kind of on the same roster.
Technically, and sure. We'll go ahead and take some more callers in a little bit. Let's go on to our next subject. Hang with us. Here we go with the addition of tight end Rob Gronkowski. Do the Bucs draft needs change at all? JJ?
No. Nice and easy, no. It's offensive line. You got to have Tom Brady upright, or else he can't be Tom Brady. Andrew Thomas is the key here. I don't think draft needs change, but I do think maybe that they change in the second round. I think maybe the Tampa Bay draft is geared towards a running back a little earlier than they expected, but I do think the draft stays pretty much the same. Offensive line's in need. Jameis Winston, didn't have a lot of time to throw last year, between 2.75 and 2.7 seconds, and that's per ESPN.com. So not a lot of time. You need that extra 0.25 seconds to get your throws accurate down the field, and Andrew Thomas can provide that, and hopefully Rob Gronkowski too, because he can block as well. So those two additions right there, that solves your problems a lot of the ways. Tampa Bay, no, their draft needs do not change.
Dave, what do you think with the division rival Buccaneers?
Well, obviously they're going to be an interesting team to watch this year, just with the two that they brought in from New England. The analysis that I've read, their top needs are both offensive and defensive line. I'd say with Brady, who was not mobile really to begin with, even at New England, but New England for the most part was able to protect him to the level that they obviously became a dynasty. It's great that they were able to add Gronkowski, but again, let's not confuse the Tampa Bay offensive line with what Brady played behind most of the time that he was in New England. So I think they've really got to, stack up the offensive line. They're going to have to really build some depth on that offensive line. We're talking about, a Brady that's not in his prime per se. He's on the other side of the hill, still very effective. And I'm saying nothing negative of Brady. I mean, as a Patriots guy and a native of the Boston area, I kind of wish he was still up there as I do Gronk. But, I understand the business of the National Football League. But looking at the analysis for Tampa Bay, I think they definitely need offensive line. And I think that, it probably would behoove them to look at running backs as well. They've got what are they picking, 14th in the first round? DeAndre Swift, Wisconsin's Jonathan Taylor, and the Ohio State kid, Dobbins, might be available by the time they get that pick at 14.
Well, I tell you what, Dave, I think they've got to go line first, and that Tristan Wirfs, the offensive tackle out of Iowa, and that's one that stands out. JJ mentioned Andrew Thomas out of Georgia. The New York Giants are highly interested in him. We shall see. Right now and Jedrick Wills out of Alabama. I believe it's going to be one of those three players. And then I think, like you said, Dave, they'll go get a running back in round 2. And if they get Jonathan Taylor, whoa, this guy's a bruiser, and he will wear out the defense. We shall see. We're going to go to another question, then we'll go to the callers. Let's go to we'll go to the next one here. We all expect LSU quarterback Joe Burrow to be selected first overall by the Bengals on Thursday night. They actually said today they're not trading from the pick unless they lie at the last minute. Dave, which quarterback is next for you on the board if Joe Burrow does go?
Well, the prevailing favorite, amongst fans, and the name you hear the most is Tua Tagovailoa from Alabama. The question is, can he stay healthy? I know that he had an ankle injury that was recurring. I read a report of the wrist injury, a lower back injury. The question is, does he have there's no question he's got the skills, the physical skills. If he's in the right system under the right head coach, the position coach, and if he goes in with his head on his shoulders, which I'm sure he will, again, if it's the right situation to learn and to handle the transition from Alabama to whatever team that he goes to. But the question is, can he stay healthy? If he can stay healthy and find a situation where he goes in as a backup and doesn't have to go in and be a starter right away, I think he could have a successful career. I don't know how long. It's either him or the Herbert kid from Oregon. And I don't know. I think the injury situation may scare some teams away. And I think maybe the kid from Oregon ends up being the second quarterback taken.
Yeah, the second quarterback to me off the board, it's going to have to be, drum roll, it's going to be Justin Herbert, I think. I personally, if it's up to me and I'm a general manager in a draft war room, I'm going with the more athletic, higher upside Tua Tagovailoa. I think the athleticism, a little bit better accuracy down the field, 71.4 completion percentage last year before the injury versus Justin Herbert, 66.8. So a little bit more accurate with Tua. But I do think the injury questions are going to have Justin Herbert drafted above Tua Tagovailoa. So I think Justin will go second to be the second quarterback overall. And I do think it will be to the Miami Dolphins. Look, Justin's a great quarterback. He had, again, over 66% completion, 32 TDs, 6 INTs, so he's real accurate. 42 career starts. That's something that sticks up in my head. Lots of tape on this guy, lots of experience. Here's another thing Herbert has over Tua. His deep ball's unprecedented. Last year, according to Next Gen Stats, 15 TDs for Justin Herbert, 0 interceptions on go routes. Unbelievable. That's unbelievable numbers. Usually on a go route or two, you're going to have a pick. You're going to have an inaccurate throw, one go out of bounds. But 15 touchdowns on go routes last year. That's impressive. So that's why I think Herbert's going to go with this, be the second quarterback overall taken. But keep in mind, folks, if I'm a GM, I'm drafting athleticism. It's the new NFL. Look at Lamar Jackson. Look at Kyler Murray. Look at all the other dual threat quarterbacks in the league. Deshaun Watson. There's more and more coming. Justin Herbert is the quarterback.
We'll definitely find out. We're going to find out. That's for sure tomorrow. It'll be very interesting. Like you and Dave said, do people pull the trigger on Tua? Do they forget that he's been injured? Do they roll the dice and do it? The Dolphins are a team to me that could, if they don't trade up and lose their first round draft picks, they have more room for error. So if they do draft Tua, and it doesn't pan out, they still have 2 other first round draft picks to fall on. Where a team like the Chargers drafting 6, they got to get it right. So we'll find out. Let's see what one of the callers thinks regarding this situation. Let's go to Wayne out in Memphis. Wayne, welcome to ATL Prime Sports.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good.
Well, the only thing I've really been looking at is Atlanta's position if they move up or don't move up and needing a defensive player. And has anybody I watch a lot of SEC, so has anybody thought about the Javon Kinlaw out of South Carolina?
I'd love to have him in a Falcons uniform, Wayne. You know that.
Yep.
I just don't know if defensive tackle is the first round need for the Atlanta Falcons. You're right. You look at Javon Kinlaw, you put on the SEC tapes he had. You go to the Georgia game. You look at the Alabama game that he had. Some of the best offensive lines in the country manhandled them, and he single-handedly kept South Carolina in that game against Georgia, and honestly was probably the biggest factor in that game. He had 2 or 3 sacks, had a couple tackle for losses. The guy can effectively take over a ball game. That is the type of talent you want on your football team. He is a generational guy. He may be one of my top 5 players. You may hear his name later on in this show.
Well, if you're going to talk defensive tackles, gentlemen, you better not leave out Derek Brown out of Auburn. This guy's the real deal too. And, the Falcons, they could go DT, but I don't think they will. But who knows? It depends how the draft shakes out, who's gone. A lot of times you'll draft that, the next best player. So if you do that, they could go that route. That is possible, Wayne. What else is on your mind?
Well, as much as I like Derek Brown, and I'm a big Auburn fan, I think that if you're looking at defensive tackles, if you can't get the guy from South Carolina, the guy from Texas A&M, and I can't pronounce his last name right, Matadudaki.
Okay, yes. But that might not be somebody that goes in the first round, though.
That's what I'm saying. If they don't move up, though, that would be maybe somebody they could get in a later.
That is true. That's a good point. What else is on your mind, Wayne?
Well, really nothing else. I mean, I heard you guys talking about moving the college football to spring. That would be a super weird thing. I felt like I'd feel like I was watching some USFL or something.
Yeah, it'd be weird. It'd be weird, but
you'd be ready to be watching the Memphis Showboats again.
Hey, listen. 86 fall is boats ball.
Hey, I'll tell you what. I'll take football any time of the year that we can get it instead of the middle of the summer. I'll take it in the spring. I'll take it in the fall. And I'll certainly take it in the winter and the snow. Could you imagine if college football was played in the snow? Because unfortunately the Big Ten season is done like in, November. Some games you get in the snow, but if these games were played in December in the snow, like if the conference championship game was outdoors, oh my gosh, that'd be one heck of a scene. Wayne, thanks so much for calling in. We got to let you go, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, man.
Thank you. That's Wayne out of Memphis. Let's go to the next question. Plenty of talent to go around Thursday night. Give me your top top 5 players in this year's draft class. Let's go, JJ. What do you think? Top 5.
Wow, there's so many to choose from. I had to leave one off, and my one that I left off, Wayne, I'm sorry, it is Javon Kinlaw. He would be my 6. My top 5 goes like this. I'll start 5 to 1. Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver out of Alabama, 6'1", 192 pounds, 77 catches last year, over 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns. Man's a deep threat waiting to happen, averaged 15 yards per reception. Number 4, I think is the best running back in the draft. He's got hands. He's got speed. He's got durability. DeAndre Swift, running back at UGA, 5'9", 215 pounds, over 1,200 yards. very few attempts. Average 6.2 yards per attempt last season, 7 touchdowns, can catch the ball out of the backfield, can block too in certain situations. He's not the best blocker, but he can get in there. I think he can run between the tackles well with a good offensive line. DeAndre Swift's my number 4. Number 3 is Joe Burrow. Got to be Joe Burrow. I have him 3 because I think there's 2 defensive players that are absolutely elite, that are the safest 2 bets in the NFL draft. That's why I have Joe Burrow number 3. And if you know me from prior experience here, I am not the biggest fan of quarterbacks in the first round. There's just too many busts. But hey, you got to draft him. You got to have your franchise guy. Joe Burrow's it. 6'4", 216. The hands are an issue, under 10 inches. But when you throw for over 5,600 yards and 60 TDs with six interceptions, you're going to get drafted. National championship, Heisman, tore Georgia apart, one of the best pass defenses in the country. Saw it live. Joe Burrow is my number 2. My number 3. Number 2 is linebacker Isaiah Simmons out of Clemson. 6'4", 230. 67 solo tackles last year, 7 sacks, 3 interceptions. Guy can control a ball game. He is a generational talent at linebacker. He is the safest bet in the draft, more so than my number 1 player. But my number 1 player is simply freak ability. It's Chase Young, defensive end, Ohio State. I think most people are going to agree with me. 265 pounds, 6'5", 16.5 sacks last year, folks. That's 16 and a half sacks. That's unprecedented. That's more than anybody in the NFL last year. 6 forced fumbles. This guy is a game changer as well. Those are my top 5 guys: Young, Simmons, Burrows, Swift, and Judy.
What do you got, Dave?
Well, I mean, JJ just ran down, most of the names that I've got. I kind of broke it down by position. Obviously, you look at running backs, and it's hard to argue with DeAndre Swift and the numbers that he put up at the University of Georgia, and being a big part of the success that that they've had over there. It's hard to argue with that. I mean, you could throw out the Taylor kid at Wisconsin, and like I said, the Dobbins kid at Ohio State, and we won't know until these guys actually get through an NFL camp and hit the field, and we'll see how many of them are impact players. One thing I always look is how many are immediate impact players, how many guys have to go through a bit of an adjustment period from the college game to the program. Quarterbacks, who's going to argue with Joe Burrow? Won a national championship, incredible numbers at LSU last year. Again, if Tua is healthy, could have a nice career in the National Football League, and you talked about the Herbert kid. So Swift, the top running back, Burrow, the top quarterback. I even looked along the offensive line, and some names, there's a handful of names there that you put at the top of the list, but Wills, the kid from Alabama, obviously playing in that system for Saban and having the kind of success that they've had across the board at really just about all their positions, hard to argue. JJ mentioned Jerry Jeudy, hard to argue with that one as well. There's some other names in there you can throw out. The Jefferson kid at LSU, the Higgins kid at Clemson, you can throw those names out, but Jerry Jeudy, probably the top of the heap on the pile there. And again, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. I mean, is Chase Young, when you talk about impact players on the defensive side, now I'll give you an example, even though they don't necessarily play the same position. Would we all agree that coming out of Clemson, Grady Jarrett came to Atlanta and was almost immediately, an impact player and is now the nucleus of that Falcon defensive unit? Do we all agree on that?
Absolutely. Yes.
Young could be the same kind of player, not the same position, but be the same kind of impact player where with whichever team he goes to and gets drafted. I'm not saying he's going to lead a team to this, the playoffs, the Super Bowl. I'm just saying that whatever team he goes to, if it's on the up and up and he transitions well, he could be a Grady Jarrett-esque player on the defensive side of the football for whichever team goes in and drafts him.
Hey, Dave, can I ask you a question? Who's the best player coming out of the Sun Belt, in your opinion, that will get drafted first?
Well, some of the players, I mean, there's a couple of players that they're talking about. I don't have all their stats in front of me, but you hear during the course of the season, Robert Hunt, an offensive lineman out of Louisiana Lafayette, a big 6'5" kid, 325. Obviously, the Raging Cajuns have a good, solid program coached by Billy Napier, who makes me feel old, but I remember him during my days up in Greenville working on the Furman football broadcast. He was one of our quarterbacks back in the day, and he's really kept it going at Louisiana Lafayette. And year in and year out, they're usually towards the top of the standings in the Sun Belt West. Always a team to be reckoned with. But Robert Hunt, big offensive lineman from Louisiana Lafayette, and again another kid coming from a program that does nothing but win and that is very solid defensively. I know this because I've seen them. Akeem Davis Gaither, the linebacker from Appalachian State. Those would be the two that come to the top of my at the top of my head that could come in. Now there'll be other Sun Belt players, that get an opportunity. But when it comes to possibly getting drafted, if I had to pick two Sun Belt players that would be the first two during the course of the draft that would be picked, it would be those two.
Well, that's the amazing thing about this draft is, everybody's looking at the big time players from the big schools, but it's these other players from smaller schools like the Jerry Rices, the Walter Paytons, and etc. These guys can excel and become Hall of Famers in the NFL, just like the kids from the bigger programs can. I would say my top five, and I sat there and really thought about it, but Dave kept using the word impact. So I honestly, for me, it's probably Isaiah Simmons because he can play multiple positions. I've already stated why. Chase Young 2, Joe Burrow 3, and then I'm going wide receiver after that. And you can flip the wide receivers and put them at 1 and 2. CeeDee Lamb out of Oklahoma and Judy out of Alabama. It's really a tie. Jerry Jeudy already runs NFL routes along with CeeDee Lamb at Oklahoma. Those are my top 5 players in this draft, impact-wise. But I tell you what, Nick Saban warned everybody today, do not forget about Tua. And you may be able to put him in the top 5. Absolutely. When this is all said and done, especially if he stays healthy. And his deep ball to me is excellent. And he shows up in big games. The one thing Tua will have to work on so he'll avoid injury is getting rid of the ball and letting that play go and live for the next down. Let's go ahead and let's go to one of our callers here before we go to the next question. Let's go to Lou in New Jersey. Lou, welcome to ATL Prime Sports. How are you?
Thanks. All right.
What's on your mind, Lou?
Okay, well, I'm thinking of where the Jets can go, and do you really think Tua, because he's been kind of off his game, even before I think the injury that he had, where do you think he'll actually end up?
Tua? I'm going to say Miami. What are you saying, JJ?
You're saying Miami. I'm going to stick with. I think the Chargers will take him. Going by what I've read in the past couple of days, it looks like the Miami Dolphins are going to go Herbert, in my opinion. Chargers would take Tua at 6. But I was talking to TC about this. It wouldn't surprise me if these injuries really get GMs questioning and scratching their heads, and he falls like Aaron Rodgers did in the first round. It would not surprise me one bit. I don't think he would fall as far as Rodgers did, but it would.
Dave, let me ask your opinion. Let me ask your opinion on that, Dave. Do you think Tua could fall like Rodgers did? I do not.
Probably not that far. I think it would be kind of cool to see him in Miami, and I say that selfishly because one of the receivers that he would be throwing to if and when he either wins the starting job or even when he comes in as a backup would be former Georgia State wide receiver Albert Wilson. So I think it'd be kind of cool just selfishly to be able to watch a Miami Dolphins game. And here you got Tua from Alabama throwing Albert Wilson, one of the all-time great receivers in Georgia State history. But, there's no question the Phillip Rivers era is over in San Diego.
Thank goodness.
Los Angeles. So, obviously they're kind of in the same boat as New England, as is Miami, New England, the Chargers. They all need top line quarterbacks. I mean, they're looking for the future. You go back, New England got lucky when Tom Brady comes in, when Bledsoe gets hurt, and it's the start of a dynasty. Nobody knew that would happen. The question is Joe Burrow that caliber of quarterback? Is Tua that caliber of quarterback? Is Herbert, the kid from Oregon, that kind of, nobody knows. Nobody knew who, Brady was a 6th-round pick out of Michigan.
Right.
Nobody knew. So, a lot of it, but again, selfishly, I'd like for him to get a shot down at Miami with the Dolphins.
I think that'd be very cool. Actually, my favorite college football player this year, well, there were 2 of them, Tua and Jalen Hurts. And when they were each in Alabama, I just thought, wow, how fun. And then when Hurts got to Oklahoma, I thought, really cool. Now maybe they'll face each other in the Final Four, and they did not, because that's just the way it goes in sports. Lou, are you a Jets fan, Lou? Is that what you said? I apologize.
Since 1975.
I'm sorry?
Since 1975.
Okay,
let me jump in and thank Lou for, I think it was Mo Lewis that leveled that hit at Bledsoe back in the day, and then that awoke the sleeping giant of Tom Brady. So we want to thank the New York Jets, those of us true Patriots
You're welcome.
fans.
You're welcome. Yeah. Anyway, you were just mentioning about how college football has different scenarios of what they want to play if it doesn't go as planned like in the fall. I wouldn't mind having them play in the spring. In 2021. I mean, it's going to give us something to watch in the warmer summer months besides baseball. No offense, of course. But, I wouldn't mind seeing it. I mean, okay, USFL Part 2 or XFL Part 3. No, we weren't thinking that. But it'd be nice to see some good competitive football after the NFL ended the season in early February. So I'm all for it.
Lou, I'm really glad you called in this evening, because I got to tell you something. I don't know if you know this or not. But last week I interviewed Connie Carberg, who is the first woman scout in NFL history. She's got she was on NFL Films. She was the one responsible drafting Mark Gastineau. She learned from a lot from Woody Hayes at Ohio State, because she went to Ohio State. She got to watch all the Buckeye practices. So, she grew up in football. Her dad was a doctor for the Jets for 26 years. So if you want to check that, if you want to go check that out, on ATL Prime Sports on YouTube. Go check it out on the Stables there on Twitter. I'm sure the interview's there, and listen to it, because I tell you what, I was fascinated with her knowledge of football, which is top rate. And I was really glad I got her on the show. And since you're a Jets fan, I thought I'd let you know that so you could go listen to her.
Yeah, Lou, you can go check it out at www.primetimewiththestablesnetwork.com. Listeners, you can always listen to all of our live shows there and old shows there. So, Lou, you can definitely go check out that interview with Connie Carberg.
Okay. Lou, thank you so much this evening. Shout out your show real quick, then we'll let you go.
All right. Well, number one, of course, is the Enhanced Sports Show, Saturdays 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The number, of course, is 512-543-4662. And, of course, our Monday show, which is rocking along the shores of Lake Erie Sports. That's Monday nights from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So,
Lou,
if you get a chance, check that out.
A great evening. And you know what? You would think Lou would be a Dog Pound fan, but now since he's talking about rocking along the shores of Lake Erie, but no, I get that. That's great. Let's go on to our next question here. Every year there is a surprise pick, whether somebody trades up or trades down. You guys all remember the Colts GM years ago. Who in the hell is Mel Kiper? So it's a pick that no one expects. And what team or player might be that surprise pick there, Dave?
Well, you said something a little while ago before we went to Lou's call that kind of triggered a thought process here, and I don't have a particular name, but throughout the first 45 minutes of tonight's show, the players that we talked about, other than when I've mentioned a few Sunbelt players, and by the way, I've got a couple of others to add to the two that I gave you, but we've talked about players from Power 5 conference teams, and as well we should. But you said something that triggered a reminder - thought process that there's a whole segment of players, and I'm not talking about Sunbelt, I'm not talking about Conference USA, I'm not talking about Mountain West, I'm not talking about the MAC. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about the historical black colleges and the fantastic talent that year in and year out comes out of the HBCU universities, that those guys don't get a lot of play. Granted, everybody is on television or video somewhere now, whether it's ESPN Plus or ESPN3 or just local streaming. But those schools are rarely ever on the four-letter network. And so we don't become familiar with who these players are. Jerry Rice obviously carries the flag for the historical black colleges from a historical NFL draft standpoint, and everything that he did during the course of his career, most notably with Montana and the 49ers. But my point is there's a whole crop of players that we don't, you and I, we don't know all of their names. We don't know any of their names without doing research. But there's some diamonds in the rough, no question, amongst those historical black colleges. And we won't know until you get into the meat of the draft and you start learning who some of these players are.
Absolutely. Shannon Sharp, another prime example of
Doug
that.
Williams.
Exactly. Out of Savannah State.
You know what? I like this, man. This just, we're going back to these conferences because I do play-by-play for the SIAC on Flow Sports, and I know Sam Crenshaw does it too. So I really
you've seen some of these players.
Yes, I have. I don't know if any of them will get drafted, but they'll definitely get signed as a free agent. And I can see a couple of these kids, making an NFL squad. I agree with Dave totally. JJ, what's yours?
Yeah.
My surprise pick, I've tossed my head around this a couple times. I kind of got two. I'll give you two. So mine would be at 12. I think the Las Vegas Raiders may shock everybody and take Ruggs out of Alabama, the speedster. You've seen Raiders over the formerly known as the Oakland Raiders. Now the Vegas Raiders, are they going to go in and try and draft a bunch of speed demons like the old ways? I have a feeling that they may do that. Carr needs a couple more wide receivers out there. We'll see if that's my first surprise pick. But here's my number two, which is less under the radar. Look, the Washington Redskins have a lot of defensive line talent. They may decide to, you know what? Let's trade the number two pick, see what we can get for it. That would be my surprise. It would be a trade at the number two pick to get more picks for the Washington Redskins because their defensive line is pretty good. So those are my two surprise picks. I definitely agree with what you guys both said. There's some hidden gems out there in the Division II level, even into the HBCU level, and you'll see those on day 2 and day 3 of the draft, and those are honestly the best stories.
They are. They are the best stories, and it's not even close. I only can really think of one big surprise that can slide up in the first round, and it's the Dallas Cowboys. They interviewed Jalen Hurts, and that didn't get on television for nothing. With the Dak Prescott situation, him not signing the tag yet. They've offered him a bunch of money, a bunch of years. Nobody knows really what the holdup is. But the fact that they publicized it and put it out there for everybody in the media to see, it wouldn't shock me if they took Jalen Hurts or if they took the kid Jordan Love out of Utah State. But I'll stick with it. I'll call it. I'll say they take Jordan. I think they take Jalen Hurts at 17. It's just a wild fantasy. It probably will not happen. I think Love maybe has a better chance based on what everybody says, but I think they go quarterback in the first round at 17. That would be a shock. And JJ, you mentioned real quick about the Skins. Supposedly, ESPN was saying today they've got a suitor to move up to number 2. So you might be right. Call me crazy, but that's my crazy. Throw it out there. What the heck? Surprise pick. Jalen Hurts going in round 1. Let's go to our next one. Earlier we had our top 5 players of the draft. Which player
Can I throw a question out there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Back me up or correct me if I'm wrong, and I forget where I saw this, because in the wild, wild west of the social media world that we live in, of Twitter and Facebook and so on and so forth, did you guys see the report, and I think it was coming out of Houston, of a potential Deshaun Watson to New England trade?
Oh, I've seen that, and I've also seen it to Atlanta, and I couldn't believe it. Jay and I said, you know what? If he came to the Falcons, JJ says make the trade now.
Yeah, I would. Absolutely.
But,
and Matt Ryan could go back. Matt Ryan could go back to the Boston area. He could be your quarterback of the Patriots.
No, God.
Nothing's far-fetched right now, is it not? Anything's on the table. I agree.
Dave,
I saw a report.
Dave, if that comes to existence and Matt Ryan gets over the hump and wins the Super Bowl with the Patriots, I think Atlanta fans we're just gonna die. Our hearts are gonna stop.
That would be the apocalypse of the National Football League.
It would be. I mean,
28-3 to Super Bowl champion of the Patriots, Matt Ryan.
Oh gosh, guys, I've got something.
If you're going to trade for Watson, he's got to go somewhere where he can play right away. And New England needs a quarterback. But if you're Houston, why would you do that unless you're going to move up and grab one of these other younger guys?
Yeah,
that's true. I mean, that's a heck of a point. Somebody put on Twitter today, and I don't think it was very funny, but I'll say it anyway. The state of Georgia announces this is reopening while they have a 28-3 lead on COVID-19.
I saw that too.
Unbelievable, man. 28-3 lead on COVID-19. What do these people think of this stuff? I tell you, I don't mean to laugh. It's not funny, but, I don't know. It's crazy is what it is. So earlier we had our top 5 players of the draft. Which player do you expect, or players do you expect to have the best career in the National Football League? JJ, I'll go with you on this one first.
I'll do what I did earlier. I'll go from 5 to 1.
Oh, man, just give me a few.
Wide receiver T. Higgins, Clemson. Unbelievable player his freshman year. Had a great game against Alabama. 2 or 3 touchdowns in that game. Couple big, long breakaway speed touchdowns. T. Higgins, deep threat. I think he's going to have a wonderful career in the NFL. Number 4, defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw out of South Carolina. 6'6", 310 pounds, 6 sacks last season. And again, put on the Bama and UGA tape. You'll watch this kid go to work on some of the best offensive lines in the country. Number 3, I think Tua Tagovailoa is going to have a wonderful NFL career. If he goes to San Diego, I think he'll have even a better career than he would if he went to Miami. So Tua, and number 2 and number 1, both Georgia players. Offensive tackle.
No, of course, you homer.
Yeah, but no, it's true. Look at UGA offensive tackle Andrew Thomas, 6'5", 320 pounds, one of the best tackles in the draft. He goes to if he goes to Tampa Bay, where a lot of people are predicting him, you can't tell me he's not going to have a great career for the first 2-3 years of his career with Tom Brady there. So you look at that. That's number 2. My number 1 player with the best career in this NFL draft, it is, according, if he does get drafted, Rodrigo Blankenship out of UGA. UGA all-time leading scorer, 100% on extra points, an 81.8% on field goals during his career at Georgia. That was really drastically cut down in the last 3 or 4 games of the year, as he missed 2 or 3 in the last 2 games of the year. That was around 90%. Going into those last 3 games. So I don't know if that's a hiccup on the shoulders or just a bad couple games, but I think Rodrigo Blankenship will have the best career out of anybody in this draft.
I can understand that. What about you, Dave?
Well, again, I mentioned impact players, so I'll go with a guy like Chase Young. You know, I'm hoping that, or looking forward to him becoming, like I said, a Grady Jarrett kind of player where he goes, you know, he will rally and the defense will basically be built around his play, kind of like it is somewhat here in Atlanta. Is Jerry Jeudy in the same receiver-wise as, you know, Julio Jones and the other one the Falcons have, Calvin Ridley. Yeah, Calvin Ridley. I mean, is Jerry Jeudy that caliber at the next level wide receiver? I mean, we're going to find out. I think you're right about Swift. You know, he, you know, wherever he goes, he's going to be an impact player. And, you know, I mentioned New England, being from that area and being a Patriots fan my whole life. Bill Belichick likes Georgia Bulldogs.
Yes,
he does.
You know, there's never been a shortage of Bulldogs on that roster, from the running back and Sony Michel to the starting center for the Patriots, another Georgia kid. I'm trying to think of his name right now. David
Andrews.
Yeah, David Andrews, you know, solid at on the offensive line at center for. So, you know, I wouldn't mind seeing one of these Bulldogs end up in the cold weather of Gillette Stadium up in New England and become impact players up there. But, you know, a self-promotion with this next statement as well, because it brings up a good story, and he and I talked about it. But, you know, we just finished the 10th year of Georgia State football, and coming up tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Eastern time, it's going to be a virtual watch party for a documentary on the 10 years that Georgia State has played football, called Our City, Our Time. And it runs about an hour, and you can pre-register. It's free. You know, it's just a virtual watch party, but you can register online at georgiastatesports.com. And the only reason I bring that up, because for the last few weeks, we do a weekly Panther Insider podcast that I record every Wednesday. And we've been going back and interviewing former players and you know, reminiscing with them about the building of the program at Georgia State. So the guy that I interviewed today, and is one of the great stories, in my opinion, in the NFL, was an unrecruited walk-on kicker who was then undrafted and is now one of, if not the top kicker in the National Football League. And that's Will Lutz out of Northgate High School down in Noonan and Georgia State. And it just goes to show you that you can be an impact player and not be drafted. So whether Blankenship gets drafted or not, he could go somewhere and become an impact player the same way Will Lutz has with the Saints.
That's a heck of a point, Dave and JJ. You know what? When you said the kicker, the first team I thought of was the Detroit Lions. They're a team, they may not win a lot of games, but they do a great job with their kickers, from Jason Hanson to with the other one. Why am I stuck on his name right now? I'm a Lions fan. I should know this. Jason Hanson, Eddie Murray. Jason Hanson kicked 21 years. Eddie Murray kicked like 15. And now they got this Prater kid who's going to kick for a while. I mean, maybe the Lions will just go ahead and take Blankenship in the 7th round, and he'll kick for 20 years. I mean,
you know, we say all the time on the say all the time on the Georgia State broadcast, nobody talks about kickers until it comes time that you have to talk about kickers.
That's true. Well, unless you're the Detroit Lions and you just desperately need to talk about something, because this franchise has won one playoff game since 1957 with a curse of Bobby Lane, and it's still going on. And, you know, I was a season ticket holder. I moved down here. I gave up my season tickets. And what do? The next year they win a playoff game, and they almost go to the Super Bowl, and they get destroyed by the Washington Redskins in the NFC Championship game. But, you know, that's how it goes being a Lions fan. So my top 5 guys that are going to last for a long time, real quick. Joe Burrow, to me, the quarterbacks last forever. You know, they just seem to last a long time. You have a good career. You know, the wide receivers usually have a long career. Jarrett Jeudy, C.D. Lamb, the kid Henry Ruggs. This kid can fly. He can have a long career. So the skill players, to me, end up having the longest careers. Your running back is the shortest shelf life in the NFL. And remember this, too. It's really hard to predict because the average player in the NFL only has a 3 to 4 year career or 2 to 3 year career, and they don't call it what's the thing for the National Football League? What is that, JJ? The saying? I can't remember off the top of my tongue.
Not for long.
Not for long, as Jerry Glanville would say. Jerry Glanville would say, not for long. Let's go ahead and move to our next to last question this evening.
Yeah, hey, TC, let me jump in real quick. It just got something that came across. I shared it on our Twitter feed. NFL reports, NFL on Fox, Jay Glazer reporting the Falcons are looking up to move as high as number 2.
Oh, did they get Chase Young?
Go look at it. I just retweeted it on the ATL Prime Sports Twitter account. Go look at it. I told you the Falcons are going to move up. It's for who?
Chase Young, maybe. Yeah, you're right. We'll see. The NFL draft is key to building success for teams' future. Which teams have the most to gain from this year's draft? And let's just do 2 of them real quick. Dave, go ahead.
The two teams that have the most. The two teams that have the most
to gain from this year's draft, that they can use this draft and propel them to the Super Bowl.
Well, I don't know if it'll be the Super Bowl. I mean, I think if Joe Burrow goes to Cincinnati, I mean, they're not going to be knocking on the Super Bowl door anytime soon. I would say, I don't know, the Los Angeles Chargers have the task of replacing Phillip Rivers, who's been, entrenched as quarterback there. How many years ago was it that they lost to the Patriots in the NFL playoffs?
Not last year, the year before.
Yeah, they were 1 win away from knocking on the door, and at that position where you can only play one guy. They've got to make the right choice. You can't make the wrong choice at quarterback position. I know we talk about it a lot. And so I look at that number 5 and the number 6 pick for the Dolphins and the Chargers. Those two teams have to make the right decision with what some consider to be the most important position on the field.
It's true. JJ?
My 2 teams most to gain in the draft, I'm going to stick in your division, Dave. It's the Miami Dolphins for sure. They have 14 draft picks, 3 in the first round. Look good the last few weeks of the season. Brian Flores will have his franchise quarterback in place. Can he take that momentum? And you know what they did, Dave, at the last week of the season? They knocked off those old Patriots. I really think the Miami Dolphins have a lot to gain. 14 draft picks. Again, 3 in the first round. You get 3 impact players in the first round. Watch out. Any team that adds 3 impact players in the first round of a draft, it can be instant turnaround. You look what the Falcons did when they added Matt Ryan in I think it was 2008 or 9.
Yep.
What did they do? They went to the playoffs. The second team, it's got to be your New England Patriots, Dave. 12 picks. Do they draft a quarterback? Those are my 2 teams with the most to gain with tomorrow night's draft.
Mine's Tampa Bay. They simply picked up Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski. Just Gronk. They picked up Gronk and Brady. Anyway, I'm getting tongue-tied here. They picked up Gronk and Brady. Now they're all in. The chips are all in. That first pick has got to be an offensive tackle. The next one's got to be the running back, and they're ready to go. And if they, continue to work on each side of the line of scrimmage as the draft goes, could they go all the way? It depends on a lot of things. Brady's health. Does his game slip? Does he stay where he is? He slipped some, but he still looks pretty darn good to me last year because the Patriots had wide receivers that couldn't get separation on those defensive backs. So I'll say Tampa Bay. And here's another team I'll say, and it to me, golly, it's got to be the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens were on the doorstep last year with a big regular season. They faltered in the first round. What do they do? Do they pick up another wide receiver for Jackson, the QB? Does his game take a step up? Does he become a much better pocket passer? Because if he does, Kansas City could be dethroned in the AFC. So I'm going with Tampa and Baltimore. Callers, if you got one last shot to call in, 678-280-7123, 678-280-7123. Our final question this evening. Several general managers are on the hot seat. Which GM must nail this draft and win this season? JJ, give one.
Oh man, several general managers around the league are pretty safe. They're pretty safe. There's not a lot of turmoil at the general manager position, in my opinion, but I really think it's right here in Atlanta. I think a general manager that must nail their team's draft is Thomas Dimitroff, hands down. He's missed on his last few defensive picks, going back to Vic Beasley. Some people are starting to say Tack McKinley is now maybe a bust. Thomas D is under the microscope. Will he get impact players? Because if this team doesn't make the playoffs, I don't think Thomas Dimitroff nor Dan Quinn comes back. The second one, it's got to be Bill O'Brien. Traded away DeAndre Hopkins. What is he going to do to replace that kind of talent? That is a big question mark. It looks like the relationship with him and Hopkins was shot. He's now the general manager. He may be under some fire, but to me, it's Thomas Dimitroff, hands down.
Dave?
Well, the one team that comes to mind, and I'm at a loss. I'd be lying to you if I told you I knew his name exactly, but the GM of the Washington Redskins. When you work for Daniel Snyder in Washington, there's not necessarily a lot of room for error. And again, you got you got a top pick, so it's hard to screw it up. So I think they're safe. Obviously, whoever the GM of the Redskins is obviously safe when it comes to making that first pick in the first round. I mean, the second pick in the first round, right after the Bengals. Going to be hard to screw that up one way or the other. But with regards to the rest of the draft, again, you're working for an owner who's not necessarily Bob Kraft, who's not necessarily Arthur Blank. And so I just think the leash is a little bit shorter in our nation's capital for a fan base that, like every other team in the NFL, there's not a lot of patience, if any, in professional sports or college sports for that matter anymore. So the picks have got to be right. Again, if whatever they use that first round second pick on, it's going to be a good selection. But from there on out, how do they draft? Are there any impact players beyond that first pick, their first pick of the first round? And so I think the Redskins GM could be under the gun just because of that situation up there, who he works for, and the amount of pressure that's on the Redskins to be competitive in that league. I mean, in that division.
I agree 100% with you. That would be Redskins executive Kyle Smith. He's the one that could use this draft leverage if he does really well to go into the GM role, and he's getting his first chance to run his first NFL draft. So, Dave, you may be spot on. If he doesn't do well, Dan Snyder may say, see ya. Mine is going to be Bob Quinn of the Detroit Lions. Bob Quinn, a couple of years ago, said when Jim Caldwell, in his 4 seasons in Detroit, never had a losing record, had 3 seasons above 500, made the playoffs in 2 of them, and 1 season he was 500. That was his worst season, was 8-8. He had 2 11-5 seasons and a 9-7 season. And he said, and Bob Quinn said, it's not good enough. So he brings in Matt Patricia over from New England. What do? It's been a disaster. If they don't get it right this year, Martha Firestone Ford is going to be looking for not only a GM, but a head coach. So I just want to thank everybody this evening. I want to thank you, Dave, for sticking with us this whole time. I know normally you're just you're our favorite guest on here, and you always come on and talk Georgia State sports. I wanted to bring you on for a whole show, and so did JJ. And I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank our callers out of Atlanta, Memphis, and New Jersey. And I want to thank our sponsor here, which is of ATL Prime Sports, which is brought to you by the Association of Professional Ball Players of America. I really appreciate it. I want to appreciate you, the listener. And we will talk to you tomorrow at 4 p.m. I'll have another NFL draft show with Luke Gamlin, ACHA national broadcaster, along with myself. I broadcast nationally, ACHA too. And we're going to talk more NFL football draft from 4 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. For Dave Cohen, for JJ, for Breck in San Francisco, I'm Todd Corder. Good night, everybody.